Hello and welcome to today's presentation, ACT Southern New South Wales Capital and Estate Works Update. Before I get started, I'd just like to share a little bit about DECADET. DECADET is a market intelligence platform for the defence estate community. We're just over 2 years old now, and our mission is to keep you informed as the defence estate community, the businesses, the supply chain that services the defence infrastructure around Australia. We're new, but we're adding new features every month. So there's already a blog, a newsletter, and an online directory of information covering every base and every infrastructure program across Australia. So why did I build this? I saw a need for this community to have a central source of truth. Over 25 years that I've spent in defence estate, firstly in uniform in the Corps of Engineers in the Army, and then working in different areas across the defence industry. And what I saw was countless really good businesses that would spend their blood, sweat and tears trying to break into the defence estate, only walk away after making that break-in because of the effort required to win work. So I was really frustrated because I knew that with the right knowledge, the rewards really are there in this industry. Over the past 2 years, I have spent my time traveling around the country, meeting small to medium businesses and larger businesses as well, and observing what works, what doesn't. And so I've started to see a pattern. Yes, defence is a difficult client, but they're also a predictable one. And there is really a recipe for success. So this presentation is part of a course that I've developed called Mastering Defence Infrastructure. This is the first session, and that takes you through 5 common mistakes that I see businesses making when they're entering in the defence sector, and 5 key equations that can help them, which I call the formulas for success in defence estate. So the first mistake I see businesses make is what I call pipeline blindness, which is basically chasing opportunities instead of being ready for them. A quick story, a few weeks into a major procurement activity last year, one of the big firms called me up and they wanted to get involved in this tender. They were really well suited to the defence estate sector. They had the right capability and they were based in a really underserviced region of Australia, and their project experience really matched what defence was looking for. But the problem was, by the time they called me, it really was too late. They were starting from zero without any defence-focused case studies written up, tailored project narratives or CVs. They didn't have an internal team or an executive backing for the bid. They were really starting from the back foot. So when the senior executive said to me, can we still make a run at this? I had to be honest with them and say, I don't think you can. And while they were upset about it, they understood why. In this industry, you really need to be on the front foot. You can't build readiness on the fly. These tenders move really fast, and the evaluation criteria is really specific. For businesses to succeed, you need to start with a library of material, and you need to start with evidence in advance. That means that you need pipeline visibility. So the first formula that I offer, opportunity equals foresight times by readiness. Foresight is about having an eye on that pipeline, reading between the lines and understanding what shifts are happening. And readiness is about having your team, having experience, the evidence and the partnerships in place so you can act fast when opportunity knocks. So this presentation will focus on giving you the pipeline visibility. We'll start with capital works, and then we'll look at estate works and other opportunities. So firstly, capital works. Hands up who attended last month's briefing by Security and Estate Group. So this presentation builds on that briefing. I need to make it clear I'm not a representative of defence themselves, simply an independent analyst who pays close attention to these presentations. Having attended a lot of these briefings over the past few years, I can say that the November session really felt a bit different. There was a sense that CFI was avoiding something. We've seen a lot of fluctuation happening in the capital facilities and infrastructure space in the past couple of years with the DSR, the Defence Strategic Review, had some really big impacts, and COVID as well, which created a lot of escalations. And then there were the elections at the start of this year. And back in July, when the last briefing happened, I felt there was a real sense of clarity and purpose. But then I think in November, there was an elephant in the room, something that was a bit unspoken. Yes, Brigadier Quinn wasn't there like he was meant to be. He got dragged up to Darwin to deal with a urgent matter at the last minute. But I think it was more than that. So I'm going to cover what I believe is part of that. What it really boils down to is delays. We're seeing projects getting bigger and bigger, but they're also getting pushed to the right. The other big unknown really is the estate audit, which was released to Defence. The public version is set to be released early in the new year. I sense there's a little bit that we're not being told yet. So where does Capital Facilities and Infrastructure branch actually sit within Security Estate Group? In terms of the money spent, there's really two sides to SEG. There's the capital works on one side, that's infrastructure division. And then on the other side is service delivery division, which keeps the existing bases running. Okay, so they're the two main investors within SEG. Brigadier Quinn was appointed at the start of this year. He took over from Air Commodore Ron Tilley, and under him there are two executive directors, Colonel Reynolds and East Rainey. Both of them have 8 CFI directors below them, and each director has a portfolio of projects. All up, there's 135 CFI projects currently in delivery across Australia, and that number has changed since July. Some have been closed out, and a couple of others have moved in from planning into development stage. The pipeline is fairly stable. Now, in the last financial year, there were 20 new projects approved by Parliament. So that's added a record $7.7 billion to the program. We now have a total of $13.4 billion of approved investment. What we've seen since July is actually a reduction in unapproved projects of 14%, as some projects in planning have been either scaled back or cancelled. I don't believe there's been any projects approved under the new government yet. So looking a little bit closer now at the ACT, the good news is that the investment pipeline in ACT is growing. Victoria and New South Wales also saw pipeline growth since the mid-year brief. A further $100 million added to the approved list and $1.3 billion added to the unapproved list in the ACT. And so let's dive into that in a little bit more detail. We can see that of the $600 million that is currently approved in the ACT, the bulk of that $400 million is that ADFA redevelopment project, which is with Lend-Lease as the ECI head contractor. But that's not due to start until 2029. So it's had a 3-year delay and a 69% budget reduction in the past 18 months since it was approved by Parliamentary Works Committee. The other $200 million of that approved $600 million bucket relates to work at HMAS Harman, which is currently underway. So the redevelopment project Richard Crooks has, and the National Intelligence Training Centre that BYCC is delivering. Okay, so those two projects are the two main ones that are underway in ACT as we speak. But the big news is the unapproved work. And I think the headline for this is the $1.15 billion of work being forecast for Royal Military College, Duntroon. That's set to start construction in 2027 or 2028. Nothing's been announced for this yet, but we do know that estate planning has been working on a master plan for the Canberra defence sites for a while now. They have previously flagged an intent to consolidate the Command and Staff College into the ADFA and RFC precinct. Command and Staff College is in the leased facility at Western Creek at the moment. We also know that there was a $100 million redevelopment project at Duntroon that was in planning phase, and then that was put on hold under the DSR. We know that there's stormwater issues, and there's also inadequate power coming into that site. Looking ahead further, you've got substantial opportunities on the horizon at HMAS Creswell down Jarvis Bay and also at Russell. So $50 million set aside for Russell. So they're new projects that weren't on the list in July. So for those of you in the planning phase, a few things to look out for. Let's go further afield now to New South Wales, and the big question is, where is the additional $1.2 billion in unapproved work coming from? Because that's what was flagged in the previous slide. The short answer is, I don't know, because this slide doesn't explain it. All this slide shows is RAF Richmond redevelopment project has been removed since July. So that's a huge kick in the guts for all those Lend-Lease and all of their designers who have worked hard to bring that project into the early stages of planning. You've also got 290 million removed from RAF Williamtown. I know this is not Southern New South Wales anymore, but just trying to explain. There's also been 150 million stripped out of Garden Island redevelopment. Okay. In terms of new money, the only thing of any significance is at Mulwala on the New South Wales Victorian border, where there's a $220 million project added, and that's the redevelopment project that's starting in 2028, and we'll be taking a look at that in a little bit more detail later. Down to Victoria now, and the $200 million uplift in approved works comes from the Bandiana redevelopment project. That's the other half of the Riverina redevelopment. This is offset by $100 million reduction, and then in terms of uplift in unapproved works, so projects on the longer term horizon, that uplift comes from Simpson Barracks and RAF Base East Sale. But it's not all good news for those sites. The projects have grown in size. They've also been delayed. Simpson Barracks has been delayed by another 3 years, and East Sale by 9 years, according to this graphic. Okay, so back in July, they were talking about that project being tendered in the new year. We're now seeing, at least according to this slide, pushed right back. Now, I'll get into the near-term opportunities later, but before I do, I just wanted to briefly on the changing nature of the defence infrastructure market. You might have heard of the Defence Infrastructure Panel. Do we have any panelists in the room? I think you're on the environment panel. Okay, the Defence Infrastructure Panel is a group of companies that Defence uses to access a wide range of services and expertise. So the best known is the PMCA panel, the top of the food chain, and that includes firms like the GHDs and ACOMs and KBRs. But there are many specialist sub-panels as well. Okay, so NEOS is one of them. All right. But there's also a new development this year. There's a major construction panel that includes firms, Lend-Lease, etc. So that's come online in 2025, and that's a really big shift because up until this point, the DIP panel was more consultant type thing. Now, Defence has created a panel for contractors that deliver projects of $200 million and above. That allows Defence to work more directly with a select group of major contractors, construction providers. So many of the usual players are there. You've got the Lend-Leases and the Langer Rorgs and the CPBs, but we're also seeing a few new entrants. For example, BMD has been a long-term subcontractor, and now they've stepped up into a prime role. All right, no guarantee of work here, and it's only 5 or 6 years, I think, this panel, but yeah, this is a significant shift. Importantly, the panel isn't national, it's a regionalised, which means not all panelists have access to all regions. So in the ACT, there's no Acciona, there's no Fulton Hogan, no Hanson Youngkin or Sitzler. All the rest of the panelists have access to ACT opportunities, whether they've done work here or not in the past. Another important point is the contracts. So Secure and Estate Group has evolved their own set of contract templates. These are really, they define how the sector operates. They're consistent and they're all available online. So they're a great resource for anyone who's trying to understand how Defence does business. And point to note is that SEG is looking to trial 2 new forms of contract in the new year. One is a competitive ECI, and another one is a guaranteed maximum price head contractor contract. So something that those in commercial construction will be very familiar with, but for defence, this is new territory. Another change that we've seen recently is the rise of Indigenous procurement. So Defence often uses an exemption under the Commonwealth procurement guidelines that allows them to approach a limited group of tenderers instead of going to an open tender. And what this does, it saves them time and supports the government policy objectives, and it just gets the work done sooner. So we're seeing a lot more of this. But what is the key takeaway? Construction, the panel, together with the increasing use of Indigenous procurement, this is going to shorten procurement periods. That means that Defence can move to breaking ground sooner. But that also means there's less work appearing on AusTender. For decades, AusTender has been the main source of market intelligence, but that's really not the case anymore. More and more of this work is hidden behind the panels and behind the exemptions. So what that means is for your business, visibility really is essential. If your brand isn't visible to those panels well in advance of these opportunities, you'll be invisible to Defence. So understanding who Defence works with and how they award those contracts has really never been more important. Okay, so let's look at upcoming procurement works, and we'll start with the head contractor opportunities, and there's only one relevant to South Australia at the moment, and that is the General John Baker complex at HQ Jock in Bungendore. So this project encompasses you've got secure working accommodation, living quarters, mess upgrades, and supporting infrastructure. And Defence is looking, currently the project is a PPP, so it's a little different from your average Defence project. While it is estimated contract value is over $200 million, the process began before the panel was established. So this has been offered to the open market. It's been run through Preco, which is the PPP consortium. And in October, they did an invitation to register interest. So they've closed that process now, and they're in the process of shortlisting companies with the intent of going out to market in Q1 2026. Okay. Karlang Chu is the CFI director involved, and the contact at InfraNexus is Lloyd Essau. Okay. The next project is Indigenous opportunities. The first one is, although this is currently in the market now, the ESTJ 9111 Phase 1. So this is the ICT early works contract. So this is the early works for a national program of work that I'll brief you on later. It's worth $40 to $55 million, spread all across the country, including HQ Jock, which is why I've included in this slide deck. But the bulk of the work will be Laverick Barracks and Queensland and South Australia, a little bit in New South Wales as well. All right, but that project is, I believe that the tender is closing, or it has closed already. Next up is a medium works contract. So this is, in fact, 4 different opportunities for Indigenous businesses to deliver airfield minor maintenance and inspection projects. So I think they're breaking it up into 4 different projects across Australia with a total value of 100 to 130 million. And the RFT is due to happen in the new year for that. Not sure where the sites are. There's 28 Defence airfields this relates to. As to whether any of them are in southern New South Wales is yet to be described. And then looking at the major capital works projects. So the first one is the only one really affecting the ACT is the main works of that ESTJ 9111 Information Communications Technology. So the value of this is $450 million. It's been procured as a managing contractor contract. So it includes facilities up to Zone 4, as well as associated ICT infrastructure. And we're expecting that RFT to be released in Q1 2026 to that major constructions panel. They are currently shortlisting, and that shortlist process is expected to be complete by the end of this year. We should find out soon enough who those shortlisted companies are, but they won't procure for design until they've been awarded. So the managing contractors moved away from, in the old days, it used to be that you bring your BYO, bring your team of designers with you. No longer, it's now they sign the contract and then they'll go out and procure. So we expect there'll be a design contract for this in probably towards the end of next year. And Joe Morritt is the CFI director. A bit further afield, but still within, I think, Canberra's area of influence is this project, the Australian Weapons Manufacturing Complex. So this will provide domestic manufacturing, munitions manufacturing capability, and it'll happen in either Bendigo or Geelong, I'm told. The scope includes a large missile manufacturing facility, as well as explosive ordnance storage, a maintenance workshop, and site-wide infrastructure. It's another managing contractor model, and the RFT is scheduled for release in Q1 2026. So the shortlisted entities are CPB contractors, Lang O'Rourke, Lend-Lease, and Multiplex. 4 shortlisted contractors. So we're looking at between $600 to $800 million for this project, and CFI director is Cale Da Costa. PMCA contact is Tim Hales from Oregon. Next, we've got Defence Mulwala and Benalla facility redevelopment. This is the project I was referencing before. It involves upgrades to the existing facilities at those 2 sites and upgrade to the infrastructure as well. So all in support of domestic weapons manufacturing. So think site-wide infrastructure, engineering services, explosive ordnance storage, and manufacturing facilities upgrades, and the upgrades themselves. Talus is the major tenant for that site, for both of those sites. So a pretty large price range of this project. You see between 200 and 950. That's because they're still trying to work out what scope actually falls within this project. And the RFT is expected for release in Q2 2026. So the shortlisted companies are Acciona, Built, CPB, Icon, and Seymour White. And again, Cale Da Costa is the CFI director. So let's talk about the design services contract opportunities now. I've got 3 really interesting design opportunities coming to ACT and Southern New South Wales in the new year. However, I guess for each of them, it's probably a lot of water has gone under the bridge already. So the first one is National Maritime Infrastructure Maintenance Program. So KBR is the PMCA for this project. It's currently in the market for a design services contractor. So the ITR went out in August and closed. So we're expecting the RFT to come out in the new year. So this involves upgrades to minor wharves and marine structures around the country, and that includes Twofold Bay and Southern New South Wales. So expect a strong showing from some of those who are prominent in maritime structures, so the likes of Oricon, Becker, and GHD. Second is, I think this one is the biggest design tender that I've ever seen in my career in defence. It's between $60 and $80 million in design work. The ITR is already out, and the shortlisted tender will follow early in the new year. It's guided weapons and explosive ordnance storage and distribution program. So facilities across Australia, including the facility at Twofold Bay. So think earth-covered bunkers, hardened structures, really critical national assets, and assets that were prioritised under the National Defence Strategy. So again, we expect to see the sorts of shortlisted consortia on the tender list. So the likes of ACOM, Jacobs, GHD, and KBR will all be there. Oricon is the PMCA, so they're notable absentee. But you probably also see Accor, Stantec, Becker, and BG&E tendering for that as well. And the third is, it's called General Ranges and Training Areas Redevelopment. So the tenders for this went in last month, so it's now under evaluation. And what this project will do is flesh out the plans for some major upgrades to defence field training areas and live firing ranges in Madura, including Madura here in ACT. But I guess construction isn't really expected to start till the 2030s. Subcontractor opportunities. There are a number of subcontractor opportunities at the moment or coming out soon. So we've already mentioned the ICT Early Works program and General Baker, but then you've got military redevelopment, RAF Wagga redevelopment, and the the Blamey Barracks at Kapuka. So all three of those fall under the Riverina redevelopment, which is under CPB. And there's a list of opportunities. I guess quite a number have already been closed, but there are still opportunities on the ICN website for that. So I've spoken about Capital Facilities Infrastructure branch, but there's another branch that's fairly new. It's called PFAS branch, and they are undertaking a program of PFAS remediation projects. There's one, I think, in the vicinity in the new year, and that will be in Victoria for Bandiana. No word on the volume of the size of that yet, but yeah, if PFAS remediation is in your wheelhouse, that's something to look out for. And there are a number of other projects further afield that I can brief you on if you wish. Looking out at Service Delivery Division, and what do they have in store? What do we look here? Another equation for you. It's about pipeline stability. So why do we bother with this? The smaller works, the estate works, because as you've seen, the major capital works can be very volatile and the projects can be delayed at any minute, leaving you with a workforce of people looking for things to do. So having a foot in the estate works program really makes sense to keep you with business continuity in the defence sector. So upcoming opportunities in the estate works program in the vicinity. There's projects at HMAS Creswell and HMAS Albatross. These were actually, they've been delayed because they were due to be released in Q3, but what's happened, there's been some handover of responsibility from JLL. They're handing that work to either McDonald or APP. Those projects have subsequently, or tenders have subsequently been delayed. There's also one called East Coast Infrastructure Works, which involves EV charging points all up and down the East Coast. Next, we've got some projects from Q4, so another HMAS Creswell opportunity, and then South Bandiana refurb works. So that's forecast. That was with JLL. It's now been handed to McDonald, and they're looking to release that in February. And then in the market at the moment, we've got two projects at RAF East Sale, so with Oricon. So they're both closing on the 20th of January. One's the accommodation works and one is a base refurbishment. Okay, so just a short snapshot of estate works projects that we're expecting a whole lot more to come out in the new year once Defence finishes its changeover, which I'll talk about just shortly now. So who here has been involved in the estate works program or the PDS last few years? Okay, the new PDS panel structure comes into effect on the 1st of February. JLL is transitioning into a program level role, which was previously held by Cushman Wakefield, and they're stepping back. The new firms that have been appointed as PDS, you've got Oricon is keeping their previous role, but they're joined by McDonald and APP. All three have really strong defence pedigrees. Oricon in particular is very familiar with the PDS space. McDonald and APP are newer players in this specific area, but they do have plenty of experience in the CFI, so the major projects space. We're expecting roadshows to resume in 2026, hopefully May, June, so keep an eye out for that. That's where they take them, they go around the country and give some seminars, and that's normally accompanied by a forward works program look ahead, larger list of the one that I just showed you. But I guess the evolution in defence in PDS reflects a really broader pattern when defence is looking to diversify its delivery partners and also lock down continuity for periods so they can go to market sooner. So that's good for the market. That means a fresh supply of subcontracting opportunities, regional firms and specialist service providers like yourselves to get amongst the work. This slide shows the breakdown of the different base services transformation program providers across the country. So they are regional contracts. Just briefly, we've spoken about PDS, but there's also property and asset services. You'll be familiar with the work of Spotless in ACT, so part of Downer Group. So now Downer has Queensland, New South Wales, all of New South Wales and ACT. Ventia is present in Western Australia and Victoria and Tasmania. And then a new player in Service Stream is moving into Northern Territory and South Australia. Okay. All three firms have been actively engaging the market, collecting expressions of interest through their websites. So if you haven't, I encourage you to reach out to their website and submit your expressions of interest to provide those services to the base property and asset services panels. And they're really transitioning in to start on the 1st of Feb. So when we pull all this together, you've got the major construction panel, the Indigenous procurement pathways, upcoming design tenders and the base services transformation. A really clear picture, I think, is starting to emerge. Defence is moving faster. They are looking to work with fewer visible tenders, and they're expecting higher readiness from industry. So that's why visibility matters for your brand, and that's what this course is all about today. Like I said, opportunity equals foresight times by readiness. If your business can demonstrate the foresight, having understanding of what's coming up, as well as having the team and the systems in place, you'll be well positioned to capitalise on the upcoming investments. So whether you're a designer, a builder or a consultant or a supplier, your success really depends on preparation. So don't wait for the tenders to appear. Anticipate, align and be ready to act when the opportunities present themselves. That's what mastering defence infrastructure is all about. Equipping your business or businesses like yours, understanding the system and forecast where it's heading. So if there's one message to take home, it's this: defence infrastructure is complex, but it's not impenetrable. It rewards persistence, preparation and professionalism. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing many of you again, possibly next year, for the Mastering Defence Infrastructure course, or on a defence base or an industry briefing somewhere in 2026. Okay. And just to save that link there, decnet.com.au/events. I've updated that with not only my own events, but other industry conferences and seminars summits that are coming up all around the country in 2026.